It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, November 20th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that cannot believe I'm saying the sentence. The Flyers have won 5 games in a row, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, it's a high point.
It is. We are going to get into the weekend wins against Vegas, Columbus, plus have our nemesis of the week.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can subscribe or follow our show for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, I am speechless in the best way possible here. Not only did the Flyers beat the defending champion Vegas Golden Knights after coming close to doing it earlier in the season, finished out the weekend against Columbus. Now the Flyers have won 5 games in a row. And I think there's a lot of good and a lot of things to build on that came out of this weekend.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of good. There's still some bad, obviously, and there's definitely things to build on. I mean, the way this league works is you win 5 in a row, everything's great. You lose 5 in a row, everything sucks. Like that goes for any team in this league.
Yeah, I would say so. The little bit of news and roster maneuvering that happened over the weekend. Felix Sandstrom was put on waivers on Sunday. As of recording, obviously, we don't know if he has cleared or not, but the Flyers obviously decided that they felt like the risk was low at this time to put him
Right.
through waivers.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you couldn't do it all season. So whatever happens, happens, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think so too, especially given the way Flyers goaltending performed over this past weekend.
Mhm.
Feeling pretty solid about that. There was a lineup change as well for Sunday, in addition to Sam Ersson checking in between the pipes. Morgan Frost sat and Bobby Brink came back into it. And I will have to say, at first, I was a little like eye rolly about it that Frost had to come out in this one. And I'm still a little salty about it. But I do, even though I said differently on Friday's show, I've come around on that a little bit in terms of putting Brink back in because we said that maybe he should against Vegas, but I see why they did it against Columbus, that they really thought it would probably give him more scoring opportunities than in the game versus Vegas. And if you're going to bring him back in, you want him to be able to get that confidence that he needed. And against Columbus, there was a higher chance of that. So I think that made sense.
Sure. I mean, I don't discount like why Brink went in. I definitely discount why Frost went out.
Right.
I mean, basically, he's only played 10 games this year. So for the fans that want to say, hey, it's Frost's fault, he's not playing good enough, okay, if that's what you believe, that's fine. But the point is, he had 46 points last year. And if he keeps staying on this lousy rotation, he's not going to get anywhere near that. Last year, he had 46. This year, he's not going to get anywhere near 46 points. And so, like, if you're ready to wash your hands of Morgan Frost, then that's fine. I'm not, because I don't think the Flyers are deep enough to do that. But that's right now. That's the way the coach thinks. So that's just the way it is.
I know. Our good friend Ian over at Locked On Boston Bruins posted on Twitter, free Morgan Frost at some point over the weekend. And I was like, keep your hands off him, Ian. The Bruins do not deserve him.
We have to remember he's He's 24 years old.
I know. I know. Yeah, it's a little confounding still, but, you also once again, it's hard to argue with winning some of the time. So,
So
the
you're telling
Flyers.
me, just for argument's sake, that you wouldn't have won any of these games if Nick Delorier sat? Are you telling me
Oh,
that?
we're gonna talk about Nick Delorier as part of that conversation because there were several times in the Columbus game where there was, like, an odd man rush that Nick Delorier was leading, and it went nowhere because it was Nick Delorier,
Right,
and
he
I
had to
was
give up on it, just throw it in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, that part of it did upset me because there were specific circumstances that you needed a Morgan Frost and not a Nick Delorier in there, and I don't think Delorier provided anything in terms of, toughness or anything
He had a
in either
fight,
of those
but
games.
that fight didn't do anything.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think so either, but there was a ton of good that happened
Mhm.
this weekend, and I would say for me, the number one thing that stood out is I really, really like where the balance of scoring is coming from right now. So you have your veterans where you have Farabee, Konechny, and Couturier all score, especially with Couturier getting that overtime winner versus Vegas. Then you have your depth and a little bit of defensemen scoring. So you have Paling get on the scoreboard, you have Sean Walker continuing to be productive, fantastic. And then you have your younger guys with Tippett, Forster, Brink, and York. Even though York got the empty netter, it was a great wraparound carom that got it in there. So I'm going to give him credit for it.
Well, listen, the goal's
Um,
a goal, it's fine.
yeah, so I really like that there seems to be just a good balance of the different aspects of the team that you wanna see productive, putting the puck in the net, and I like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to see Paling do well, all these guys. I have no problem with that. My whole thing is just the strategy of all of it. I think you could win, and even if you lose some tough games, but you get more guys in the development part of it, I think that's just going to be important. And there's going to be a time this year where it's going to fall back on that because they're not going to be able to keep this winning pace up, and that's when the rubber's going to really hit the road. Right now, hey, you want to go chase whatever you're going to chase. I heard the broadcast say, hey, if you're in playoff position by American Thanksgiving, you're in pretty good shape to make the playoffs. And then there's this banter back and forth. If you believe in that, that's fine, but I don't believe in that.
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to say those things. I would say, like, Christmas
And they were
maybe
having
is
some
my
fun with it. I could tell Jim
yeah,
was having some
yeah.
fun with it, and that's fine. It is something that is said, but again, like for anybody that thinks that the Flyers are right now like ahead of schedule in the development game, it's too soon to tell, folks. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other development things that are going on with players you don't see that aren't playing at all. They're playing in faraway places. You're only seeing the Flyers. So that's only a part of the equation.
Right, and I think that's important to remember, but I just wanna reiterate that I just think it's good that I think for the most part, everybody who needs to be getting involved in the scoring is getting involved,
I
and
mean,
this
okay,
in
so
this weekend was
Forster got his
indicative
first
of that.
goal, right? But didn't
Mhm.
propel him. He didn't get a goal in his next game. Tippett had a nice game, then Tippett was missing the net again. It's not always going to just because they're getting this balance because guys are kicking in, whatever. For development, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the catapult for the rest of the season. Because again, Forster's not scoring the way Tyson Foerster should score. Yes, he's forechecking, although he is losing some puck battles too, which surprises me. But I'm just saying, if he goes on even just a little better pace than this, he's not really developing. Like that's the thing. You're not developing a scorer that way. Now, if you don't want him to be a scorer, okay, fine.
Well, I think they want both out of him, and they're willing to take the everything else until he can get the scoring on track. That's exactly what they're saying. I'm not even guessing there. That's what they're
No,
saying.
that's what they're saying, but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, I can see that. I do wanna mention the power play and not in a negative way.
No, it's working right now.
Yeah, 2 for 4 versus Vegas, 1 for 4 versus Columbus, but there's one that was super short because of another Flyers
Yeah.
penalty. So I'm not really like counting that. But to get power play goals in 2 games in a row, considering where this team has been from a power play perspective, I think is really good progress. So I was glad
Yeah,
to
I'm
see.
not gonna call it fixed, but what I did see is yes, when guys went to the net, it did better. But
Yep.
then there were times in the Columbus game where guys weren't going to the net for half of the power play. For maybe 15 seconds, they were in that area, and then all of a sudden they moved out of that area and they were just shooting from the sides again. So it's not a complete thing here that's fixed yet.
No, and there was that, 5-minute power play
Right,
versus Vegas where they didn't score. So
right.
I agree with you. It's not fixed, but it's better. And I think for the Flyers, that's good. And
Yeah.
I'm going to
Oh
take
yeah.
it as a win.
No, no, you can take that as a win.
All right. There's a lot more to talk about with these couple of games. And we are going to get to that coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to US customers. All right, we will be having a mailbag segment as per usual this week. So get those questions in via email at lockdownflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on the app formerly known as Twitter or comment over on our YouTube channel. Russ, I think, other than the scoring and the power play, I thought it was really interesting that these two games were both very physical, but in different ways, and that the Flyers were able to handle both types of physicality. There was like this intensity versus Vegas because they're
Mhm.
highly skilled, but they are a physical team
Yeah.
too. But the Columbus game was scrappy, where Columbus tried to like drag them down into the mud that is the Columbus Blue Jackets mess right now.
Yeah,
But
and
that
that's
but
exactly what they were doing.
yeah, and there was more shot blocks overall in the game against Columbus. Columbus had more hits on the Flyers, so it was more just like the, desperation physicality
It
versus
is
the
'cause what is
effective
that, their ninth
clean. Yeah. So,
yeah, their
so
ninth
it
loss in a row, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So I just really thought it was cool that the Flyers could adjust their game style a little bit to match the kind of physicality they were facing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, that part is really good. I think there's, the right way to do that, and I think they did it the right way in both games.
Yeah, I think so too. And just the way that, sometimes teams play to the level of their opponent.
Mhm.
And I feel like this time it wasn't to the level of their opponent because they didn't get as bad as Columbus
And I
is.
think they did for a
Right.
good chunk of the 3rd
There
period.
was there was a little bit, but I think for the most part in that game, they still played the Flyers game,
Yeah, I think
except for
that's
that
fair.
chunk in the 3rd.
Yeah.
But, I've found that in the past, the Flyers have gotten sort of sucked into whatever style of game it is, but not maintain their own identity and their own game. And I
Mhm.
feel like this weekend, they kind of showed that they can like walk and chew gum at the same time, which I thought
Yeah.
was really nice.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that's definite progress for the team factor, no doubt.
Yeah, I will say, like, the one thing that they need to work on, coming out of this weekend in particular is, taking penalties, and giving the other team a chance to stay in it, a
Yeah,
little bit longer, and, more specifically in the Vegas game, they allowed, a 5-on-3, so Vegas tied it up, with that Marchessault
right.
goal in the 2nd period. It was good that after that, Morgan Frost took a penalty early in the third, but then they didn't take any more after that, and they were able to
Mhm.
keep it deadlocked at 3 for a very intense third period. So that part of it was good. But then in the Columbus game, they take a penalty late versus Columbus. They kill it and get a power play only to have it be negated by that weird holding the stick call late in,
Right.
in the game. And so I just felt like there were some inopportune penalties in both games and that didn't necessarily have to be taken.
Well, yeah, I mean, Brink took one late also in that
Mhm.
Columbus game that was bad. It was a little frustration, little sign of
Yeah.
frustration there, even though he had a goal in the game. Uh, he was being outplayed on the ice, so he did that. Look, I mean, that kind of stuff does have to get cut out a little bit, and I do feel like structure on defense could still be better because I think block shots hide a lot of things, and good goaltending can hide a lot of things. And there were times that, I mean, their shorthanded goal, like Spencer Martin did a good job of hiding it, but if they would have called that a non-goal, even though it definitely was a goal, like that could
Yeah.
have been a turning point. So this game was
Absolutely.
close like that for that while. So I looked at it and I said, okay, like I get it. They're mostly playing the way, and I think they're still playing those two ways that we talked about like 2, 3 shows ago. That they are trying to go to the net, but they also are trying to block shots. I think they are trying to do both, and for now, it's working. But I still think I don't know if they're going to be able to do that for another 10 games, where it's like they'll decide when it's going this way or they'll play that way.
Yeah, I think, we're going to talk a little bit about that aspect of it in the next segment when we talk about our nemesis of the week. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that they are going to have to clean up their game a little bit and just be a little bit more careful, especially when the other team is gaining some momentum
Hmm.
and you don't want to like get caught by giving the other team a power play when you're already back on your heels. And luckily in the Vegas game, it all worked out in the end, and they absolutely locked it down in the third period. So I will give them credit for that. But you look at the third period against Vegas, Vegas doubled up on the Flyers on shots on goal. So you have to play disciplined when you're up against a really good team. And, they were able to do that late, but it took them a while to get to that point.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I felt like too early on against Columbus in the third period, they were just dumping the puck back in Columbus and they were just
Mhm.
playing total defensive hockey. And it's like, why are you playing it this way 2 minutes into the third period trying to hold on to, a lead? Like it's just they shouldn't be that team.
Yeah, I literally wrote down in my notes, like, "Are the Flyers too conservative right now?"
Yeah.
About, like, 2 or 3 minutes into the third
Yeah.
period.
There was definitely that edict. Like it was just like, just get the puck, get it back down the other way. And it's like, hold on, that's not necessarily the best method here.
Right, but what we did get is excellent goaltending, both from
Yeah.
Carter Hart and Sam Ersson. I think both of them made some tremendous saves at key moments in each of those games and really kept them in it until, especially in the Columbus game, the skaters kind of put it away. But he still had to make that great save toward the end of the game,
Mhm.
just to allow that nail to be driven into the coffin of Columbus for the
Right.
end of that game.
No question. And the goalie development's different where they're a little bit more used to taking a longer stretch, being out of action, and then all of a sudden being thrust into action. Like that's more normal for goalies than forwards. So Urson is definitely, e- even though he's a younger goalie, he's played enough of that position to have that happen on a lot of
Right.
clubs. So at least he is getting used to that now, and that's good to see.
Yeah, I think so, and he even talked about it post-game
Yeah,
that he feels a lot more comfortable now than he did in his first couple of starts where he hadn't played in a while,
right.
but now he feels like he's got his rhythm going and he can handle not playing for a little bit and come back in and feel just as strong and just as effective, which I think is really important.
No, it is. It's important because again, you don't want to burn out Carter Hart. You don't.
No. No, and, I think that, you look at what Carter Hart did versus Vegas. I think that, even though the Flyers outshot Vegas in that game, 31 shots on goal for Carter Hart is nothing to sneeze at, right?
Right.
So you still have to be prepared. And I thought he was very well positioned. I thought he was calm. And I think that it was just like vintage Carter Hart, like what you want to see out of him in that.
Yeah, I mean, his last few have been really, really good since he's been back from being sick. So, yeah, I think it's what you would expect from him. But I still don't want to see him play, 65 games. Like I don't
Right.
want him. I don't want the Flyers chasing some of these extra season, early season points and playing Carter Hart more than he should. I just don't think there's a benefit in that. But they still might do it though.
Yeah, that is absolutely fair. Well, we've got an interesting week of games ahead for the Flyers this week and for the next little duration. It is Monday, so we have our nemesis of the week, and we will talk about that coming up next.
You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially in daily fantasy hockey. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. With elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, all you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. Choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with all the local experts that Locked On has, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. So, Russ, last week we talked about in our Nemesis of the week this sneaky back to back that we just had. And I called it sneaky because it was Vegas on Saturday, Columbus on Sunday, with the weird start times and going from a very, very good team to a not so good team. And that can like trip you up a little bit. So I was a little nervous, but I should not have been nervous, apparently, because the Flyers won both of them, of course, and now we have our 5 wins in a row. Our nemesis this week, for me personally, is UBS Arena. It is where, of course, the New York Islanders play. The Flyers will be playing the Islanders in Long Island twice this week, as well as facing the New York Rangers. So kind of the big nemesis is New York, but the small nemesis for me is UBS Arena. I do not enjoy going to UBS Arena, Russ.
I haven't
It
been
is,
there yet, so I can't not enjoy it at this time. I understand that possibly it's because of the traffic, or possibly
yeah,
because you're going to be left off the train and then there's no like shuttle, so you got to walk like I don't know what, a half a mile or something. You got to hope it doesn't rain to get
yeah.
to.
The parking is a nightmare. The
Yeah,
transit is dubious,
yeah,
I will say. And even though I live like, I can see the Tower of LaGuardia from where
right,
I live, right?
right.
Which is very close to where UBS Arena
You
is, or
still
it's like
can't get there
halfway
from
to
here.
there. It's just so much of a mess to get there, and it's a very uncomfortable building for me personally for many reasons. So that is my nemesis, but related to that obviously is the Flyers having to play the Islanders for these 2 games, and the Islanders have been kind of a mess this
Mhm.
year. There are calls to fire the coach. We'll get into it more when we preview the game, but again, I just get a little nervous with the Islanders because they sometimes just figure out a way to drag the Flyers down into the abyss that is their playing style, and it always makes me nervous.
Yeah, I totally can understand that. So my nemesis is going to be, why can't there be one NHL game on Thanksgiving? Why not? Why give up the schedule to the NFL on that day? They have games at 12:30, 4:30, and 8:20. So why not have a West Coast game? Like, no football game will be on at that time. I think a lot of hockey fans, after a full day of like some marginal football, because I'm looking at the matchups and they're not great, would be happy to have like a West Coast hockey game. And I don't see why you couldn't do it. And I feel like they should do it. And it's not like you're going to be interrupting the holiday, because wherever those players are, the home ones will be able to celebrate with their families, and the other ones will still be able to have Thanksgiving with the team. The holiday will be over. Like, why not do it? I don't get it.
And especially the Canadian teams, right? It's not
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thanksgiving in
That's even
Canada.
so. If it was on the Canadian West Coast, then you don't even have an issue. That's a good point.
Yeah, so if you have a game in Vancouver,
Right.
on Thanksgiving night, what's the problem?
Right. Yeah. I just think it would be a good ratings booster. I think fans would like it. It's just like, fans don't like. I don't know why the NHL sort of hasn't gotten used to this, but like with these long breaks with these teams in the first month of the season, we talked about this. We're only going to get to play one game or two games. Fans don't love days off, like full days off from the sport. And I don't know if it's good to take them out of that rhythm, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and, again, when it's a holiday for one country and there's a whole other country with
Yeah,
teams
imagine what they're
I
going to like.
in the league,
Yeah,
plus a ton of players that are international and don't care anyway.
right.
So, yeah, I think that is a very fair point to make. You got, big plans for your Thanksgiving this week?
Nothing big. I'm always the one who cooks the turkey, so we'll do that. Little family get together. I'll make sure I watch a certain amount of football, but I enjoy cooking for the holiday a little bit. Like, I'll just do my part,
Mhm.
and I'm happy with that, and makes me feel like I did something for the holiday, and that's fine. I enjoy it though. I like the food of Thanksgiving. I think it's probably the best food holiday that we have.
That's probably true. Yeah, I've, settled on I know this is, like, sacrilegious for Thanksgiving, but I'm doing a crock pot pulled chicken. So,
I don't have a
gotta
problem with that. There were years when I think as a family, a couple times we went off the thing and said, "All right, let's not do turkey this year. Let's do something different." And I was okay with that. So I don't mind that people veer from it, but for the most part, I do gravitate back to it. I admit it.
Yeah, well, for me, Thanksgiving is all about the side dishes anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You can never have too many side dishes. I agree with that.
yeah. All right, that will do it for today's show. Of course, we will be back tomorrow. We will have our Phantoms Tuesday as per usual. Well, we'll have two-thirds of the Phantoms games of the week covered before we get to record that. So it'll be a lot of fun. Phantoms had a fun weekend as well of their own. We're going to get to talk about Ollie Lixel, Tanner Lazinski, and Samu Tuamala a lot. So very much looking forward to that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. Send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I am Rachel. I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.